The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
Hi everyone, it's Mark Kelly here. I hope you're doing really well and you are in for an actual treat for our ServiceNow podcast series. And continuing in our federal forum, we are absolutely delighted to welcome Nichole Francis Reynolds. Nichole is VP and Global Head of Government Relations at ServiceNow. Nichole, thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nichole, tell us a little bit about your journey, how you get into the world of ServiceNow, because we're going to be talking about more your role and what you do day to day. But actually, I'd love to hear more about your actual story to that, because it's a pretty fascinating one.
Absolutely, Mark. So the journey to this role was and has been an unorthodox one. Umpteen years ago, I won't say how long, my dream was to become an attorney, be married by 33, be a partner at the law firm I began practicing at, have the house with the picket fence, the 2 children, and the dog. And fate would have it. And I often say God has a sense of humor, that there was a journey and has been a journey involved getting to this place and to this amazing company called ServiceNow. I practiced law for a number of years at 2 fantastic law firms, global firms at that, and worked on Capitol Hill for close to 10 years in a number of senior roles with some amazing members of Congress and on a congressional committee. Worked for a Fortune 500 company, worked for a trade association, and then all of a sudden, I received a call from who I call an angel, a recruiter who was looking for someone to lead ServiceNow's global government relations team, to create it and to lead it.
Wow. So you were probably just like happy doing what you were doing on that journey, and then you took the call. You're probably thinking to yourself, what if I didn't take the call, right?
That's right. That's right. And in fact, because California, I live in Washington, D.C., and my family and I live in Washington, D.C., and because ServiceNow is headquartered in California, the message from the recruiter came in around midnight, and it was in my spam box. And think about how many of us go through our spam boxes and automatically delete those messages. And so I looked through them and saw that. And I am so thankful, that she reached out to me, and thankful, 3 years ago, almost to the date, 3 years ago, I began this role.
That's good. Knowing from working in the staffing industry myself for 15 years, I probably think that recruiter would have kept coming after you though on LinkedIn and stuff. So maybe the story isn't. Don't worry too much on the spam. But I like how you think about it. So in your role, tell us about what do you do day to day. Tell us a little about your team, and what does that look like?
So our team, I don't know if you have ever watched Scandal, but I often call our team the gladiators, because there is never a dull moment. There is never a typical day in the world of government relations. Our role is to represent ServiceNow in front of governments around the world. We are to inform them about our amazing platform, all of the great things that it does to modernize processes for, from end to end, for governments and for corporations and nonprofit organizations. And it's to inform them about our use cases, about how we are transforming the lives of people, the military, veterans, employees, etc., basketball players, those who watch Disney, those in the automotive sector, and others. And so we are to inform them about these great use cases, and we are also to just continue to elevate our brand, and we inform members of governments or policymakers around the world about our policy positions on the issues that are keeping them up at night, and that they are, working on day by day to develop policies around the world and to change the world that we live in.
So I can imagine doing that role within one jurisdiction, one area. So when you actually take that kind of global perspective on it, with so many different value systems, cultures, the legal perspective, you've got so many different types of nations at different stages of their journey, add in some conflicts and wars in between that, you've got an incredible kind of bubbling pot of just so many different types of issues that you need to keep your finger on the pulse of. Where do you even start, trying to create a value proposition that's relevant to that entity area? Because they've got so many different types of needs.
Yes. And so from a corporate perspective and even from a management perspective, I start out and I strive to start out each day by looking at our own dashboard that we have within our ServiceNow intranet site that shows me as a manager, here's what's happening with your employees today, here's who's in, here's who's out. And then we have objectives that we set each year. And oftentimes we recalibrate them as needed. And we also have our tiered countries that are priorities for us. And so we begin our day, and I'd be remiss if I don't say that I begin my day with my chief of staff, speaking about what our priorities are for the day. He keeps the trains running on time. I love working with Ben. And so he reinforces for me what our must-dos are for the day and what's nice to do for the day. And it's all based upon what those priorities are, what those objectives are, and we try to execute those priorities each day.
So, and I love that you kind of referred it back to you've got your dashboard as well. You're looking for that kind of next best action to kind of guide you along the way to do that. And then it's all a case of prioritization. And I can imagine certain things get bumped down, certain things get kind of bumped up. When you look at your kind of shared vision and working on objectives within that shared vision, how do you kind of keep that kind of within the area that you're in, but also kind of align that with ServiceNow's kind of more of kind of broad vision?
Absolutely. And our mantra is that the world works with ServiceNow. And so naturally, there are so many amazing policy priorities we are working on and use cases that we want to scale around the globe. And so we have to go back to what our tier countries are for the year, what the must-dos are for the week or for the month, and we have to hold each other accountable, because it's so easy to say, hey, this is what's happening this week, let's go over here, and then we have to kind of pull ourselves back together and remind ourselves, okay, that we want to run after is a nice to do, and we can tackle that after we accomplish what we need to today. And so it's never easy, right? But that's part of executing, being an effective executive, being an effective professional. I think that, those of us who are dedicated to striving to execute in the most efficient way, it's just it's something that you mentally have to embed right in your mind and stay focused on it and bring yourself back to center.
Yeah, and I suppose that kind of reset, and then just keep ensuring that the most important thing is the most important thing, and then you're kind of setting up your day accordingly around that side of it. And that's easier said than done, because you got a lot of different screaming voices, but sometimes those voices are screaming are not the ones that need to be prioritized as well. So when you look at some of the impact, and one of the things that I suppose I've been not surprised, maybe it's not the right word, but definitely be inspired by the impact ServiceNow has had across businesses a variety of different ways. And even at K23, they started off from the nonprofit perspective and talking about, how society getting impacted by that and getting that right is such a strong foundation, a leveler for everything else. When you do the work that you do, Is there any particular case studies or impact areas that you've had recently that kind of give you a bit of a spring to your step that you can reference to that actually kind of show, you know what, this is making a difference?
Absolutely. And you know what's so amazing about ServiceNow? We have so many awesome teams within ServiceNow, product and engineering and communications and marketing and our public sales teams, public sector sales teams from federal to the EMEA and APJ and Latin America and others that we really work hard at aligning with them on those priorities and learning what the use cases are and what is going well and how best we can scale them. And so we are really proud about our ability to do that, to build relationships within ServiceNow with our colleagues. And then we are really excited about how we have had some great successes just within these 3 years of our government relations team being in existence, in building relationships, strengthening relationships within Congress, and building relationships in Europe. And we have worked with members of Congress just within the last couple of years to develop language within appropriations legislation that would then scale that type of technology so that other servicemen and women in other branches can use that to modernize how they report their cases. If there's mold in their living quarters, if there's a leaky faucet, whatever the issue may be that's impacting their living conditions, our app helps make life better for them, makes that process work better. It also helps the employees. And so we are now hard at work working with the Department of Defense to educate them about our software, our solution, and then we are hard at work at scaling it, explaining it to members of parliament around the world about how it has been helping and continues to help our servicemen and women. And so those sorts of use cases are really, really something that I'm really, and all of us are excited about, because it's not only helping the employees, it's also helping those who are protecting our freedoms each day.
Because when you think about that, and even going to a little bit more detail on that, so if you were going to, work each day, your job is very, very important, and you need to have, clarity of mind. You don't want to be thinking or getting a phone call to say, here's all the issues that we currently have living at home. And then you're trying to quench those issues because it's hard enough for doing the job that you do. So actually having peace of mind, knowing that that is done, then you can raise it, get it processed. You know exactly where you're at with that ticket or that item. It's just one less thing to worry about, because where we live, how we live, is such a big impact in terms of our psyche. And the people that are serving for us, we want to make sure they're in the best possible mindset that we can imagine, because it's a duty.
That's absolutely right. Here they have sacrificed their lives to serve, and the last thing they deserve to do is go back to their barracks or raise children in these barracks. Those children make sacrifices too. The spouses make sacrifices, and then have to live in living quarters that has mold in it. And so yes, any way that our solution can help modernize their living conditions, it just makes us feel wonderful.
So if we kind of go a little bit more onto kind of the kind of the future and some of the things that are kind of giving you energy or exciting, is there any particular projects that are kind of standing out that you're really kind of excited to kind of get more involved in?
Yes, and so we are working with our public sector teams to implement what we are calling mission areas. We have identified 6 or 7 critically important areas that we know are important to governments around the world, and are beginning to tackle um, where can we socialize those mission areas, and how best can we determine um, that the government can go about funding those sorts of mission areas. So if you take disaster assistance, for example, we know that, look at what happened in Hawaii, the island of Maui, and how can we prevent that sort of issue from happening again? How can we mitigate against the alarm systems not going off, or the decision to not have them going up? How do we create more awareness amongst the people who live on the island so that they can make the best decisions for themselves to evacuate? Can there be some sort of notification system if loved ones are missing? How can we, as a company, leverage our platform to help governments respond to those sorts of natural disasters more efficiently and effectively? And we are doing that, and we have done that in Florida with Hurricane Ian. And so we're looking to figure out how best to scale it and how best to work with governments so that they can figure out if this is a legislative fix, is this a budgetary fix that we can create a line item to fund this sort of solution, arm these agencies with the modern technology that they need to implement this sort of solution so that they're communicating amongst other agencies. If you think about the cleanup after a disaster like this, response and recovery, it is an interagency project. So are the agencies communicating? So that's just one, subset of a mission area that we are working on, and it's absolutely heartwarming. It's exciting. It's challenging, and we pull together our teams internally to put those strategies. We're doing that, putting those strategies together.
Because as I said at the start of the show, although it's very, very diverse, and every different country and area is going to have their own different issues that are personalized and relevant to them, we're all the same. And there's going to be some unique truths that we all want to get resolution for, to live a better life and to be able to provide that. So going after those kind of 6 missions is particularly inspiring for you to as share as well. When you look at some of the new technologies that is allowing you to probably do your role better, we're obviously kind of got Vancouver coming down the track. I spoke to Victor Chen. He was telling me about some of the innovations that are happening with generative AI as well. How do you start to feel that digitalization transformation is going to help even impact further within government?
So yes, that too is an exciting topic. And our government relations team has been working on that within the company for nearly 1.5 years now. And we formed an internal working group to share internally what governments are doing by way of legislating and regulating artificial intelligence. And we are a member of, ServiceNow is a member of the European Internet Forum. And we were invited and spoke on a panel with one of the rapporteurs, Dragos Tudorache, who is one of the authors of the EU AI Act early on, toward the end of the year last year. And we had the opportunity to sit with him and other panelists and talk about what ServiceNow is doing, what the opportunities are with artificial intelligence, what the challenges are, and how we have to be mindful not to leave communities further behind. We have to bring them along as communities grapple with this, the notion that jobs may be become more automated and jobs may be lost. So educating those who want to go back to work, students who are majoring in computer science or information technology, coding, etc., or veterans who have finished their service and are looking for jobs. How can we prepare them with the digital skills that they need so that we are bringing them along? So we are helping shape legislation. We are doing that in the EU. We are now beginning to do that in Congress. Canada, Brazil has proposed legislation. Australia has legislation, and so we are excited about our Vancouver release and at the opportunity to talk more and more with policymakers about how it will help the integration of generative AI, how it will help improve productivity, employee productivity, responsibly, securely, safely, effectively.
And all those things that you said in terms of technology as an enabler and helping, and we can all see the benefits of that. And it's funny, Herb was on the show a couple of weeks back, and he was talking about from hands-on experience from being in the military and then cross-training up and then coming into the world of ServiceNow, that you've got so many incredible people from all walks of life, but unless they're given the opportunity to step up and be cross-trained and kind of given that new lease of life, we're just going to waste the talent for themselves and the corporations and companies that we work for. But also as a society, we owe it to themselves that we don't leave people behind. The elevator or lift is sent back down to kind of keep everyone on the journey, because society won't work. And that's why I'm really happy with, how people are being brought into the table on regulation, because we know it's not necessarily a straightforward point of view that we just regulate. There's obviously that kind of innovation regulation dance that is delicate, because you don't want to be too innovative and not mind the regulation, but then you don't want to be too much regulation and not enough on the innovation, because then you become uncompetitive. So there's a variety of different areas. One of the biggest challenges with regulation and such as the AI Act is you've got different sectors, different industries, different locations having their own interpretation. So we need to try to get some type of unified thoughts on that, so we can start to sell services and products in a way that it's very, very straightforward. But like everything, you need dialogue on this, and it's an ongoing process.
That's right, Mark. And the UK has also begun to take up AI legislation, and there's going to be an AI summit in November that we are hoping to have representation, at the summit. And one of the key messages that you just touched upon is harmonization. The dialogue is so important, and what we would love to see as government relations experts and as corporate executives, and just from even a consumer angle, is to see harmonization so that we are all compliant with laws that are similar in nature. Now, we recognize that each country is unique and they have their own, unique traits. And so some issues with regard to AI may be different, but the basic tenets of artificial intelligence, what does high risk mean, right? What does, a large language model mean? Who should develop the large language models? Who will be liable if some sort of risk takes place or some sort of discrimination takes place in how these large language models are deployed? Those sorts of kind of foundational tenets, we are hoping it becomes harmonized around the world, so that from a compliance perspective, companies are compliant, governments are compliant, consumers are compliant. And it's not easy, but the more governments talk, the more policymakers share best practices and developments, the more that the EU Commission, the Parliament, the Council speaks with, the UK and Congress and the Australian Parliament, Canadian Parliament. If they talk more about what they are finding, perhaps we will get to a place where all of their laws have some basic tenets that we can all adhere to.
Yeah, and then what you have is you've got more consistency. People feel more comfortable then to start creating products, bring them to market. You've got more of a kind of a rule of thumb to work off. But with technology and innovation, sometimes it takes a while for regulation to catch up. And this technology we've seen is moving so quickly that
Yes.
we need to be even more mindful for it.
Yes, and Mark, one other item I'd like to add is that as these large language models are being developed, I think it's really important to make sure that you have diverse perspectives, diverse individuals helping develop those, because then as they get developed, those individuals will take into account the ultimate impact as they get deployed. And I think that can also help mitigate against the risks.
Absolutely. And we know that currently it's not a fair representation, right? So consequently, there's so much different types of biases that we need to be conscious for as well. But this is why the dialogue is important. This is why different leaders are coming together. They understand this more than ever is a huge opportunity for civilization, but also just getting it right, having privacy by design, but also kind of having that innovation as a center point. I feel like we could talk forever, but I think this is going to have to be the last question. Nichole Francis Reynolds, thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, Mark. And on behalf of our CEO, Bill McDermott, and over 22,000 employees around the world, including close to 900 in Ireland, where you sit, thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to sitting and visiting with you again soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.